We were discussing last week the issue of infectious diseases and kidney transplants. And we're specifically kidney because most other transplants are done from a dead body, a general organ transplant. Those come with different issues, which will be discussed. But we were discussing the issue in terms of how much risk someone has to take to save someone else's life. In general, all things being equal, the Torah tells us, "Lo samod adam re'echa," don't stand by idly when your friend's in danger. You have a biblical obligation to help someone. Wasn't that one of those, the last Seinfeld about, it wasn't a life and death issue, but
the Good Samaritan.
The Good Samaritan rule. That I forgot I don't know what they didn't help in. What was
the guy got mugged?
So someone was mugged and they just stood by and watched, I guess. So where do you think they got it from? They got it from the Talmud. So it's a rule that one has to, if someone's in danger and someone's not in danger, if it's no danger to you, you have to come and help out. The question is, what happens, how much risk do I have to take? If it's no risk to me, then I'm obligated. The question is, if there is risk to me, am I still obligated? Is it prohibited or is it commendable?
Not obligated.
Right, so we'll see. So we said, so the Jerusalem Talmud says it is obligated. They said, don't worry, we'll get to the Babylonian Talmud, that's what you were quoting. The Jerusalem Talmud said you are obligated because the person, if you do nothing, the person will definitely die. And if you're going in, you're only a doubtful danger. So therefore, ain't suffik motzi midei vadei. A doubt doesn't beat out a definite. So we said, therefore, that was the case of the Yerushalmi where this rabbi, Rav Imi, was taken captive. And Rish Lakish said, yeah, I'm going to go in, either we're both going to be killed or we're both going to come out alive. In other words, he felt that one has to risk their life in order to save someone else. That's the opinion of the Jerusalem Talmud. However, the Babylonian Talmud seems to disagree and say that one is not obligated to risk one's life. Where do we see you are not obligated? A couple of Gemaras. The one Gemara in the Darim, Daf Pei 80. Let's say there's town A and town B. We won't mention names. We won't get personal. Town A has enough water to drink and enough water to do the laundry. Let me just point out at the outset here, we're not talking going to the dry cleaners, bringing in your shirt every week after one washing. That's not what we're talking about here. The Gemara is discussing if you don't use this water, it was a hygienic issue, and you could catch infectious diseases. It was a case of doubtful danger. That if you don't take the appropriate cleaning of your clothes during that time, you were putting yourself in some type of danger. So the issue is, this town has just enough water for drinking and laundry. Town B doesn't even have enough water for drinking. The question is Town A obligated to share the water with Town B to make sure that they at least have enough water for drinking? So it's a dispute in the Talmud, but the conclusion is no. That whether one can do it's a separate question, but one is clearly not obligated because you are putting your own town at risk in order to save someone. So according to the Jerusalem Talmud, the answer would be yes. According to the Babylonian Talmud, the answer would be no. Again, no in terms of obligation. Or another Gemara in Nida, Rabbi Tarfon, someone came to him, there was a rumor out that these two people were murderers, and the non-Jewish government was coming to put them in jail, kill them, and they went to Rabbi Tarfon to get hid, to hide them. So Rabbi Tarfon said, I'm just paraphrasing the Gemara, Rabbi Tarfon said, no, I can't hide you, because if I hide you, I'm going to put myself and my family at risk. So we see clearly that obviously he felt one was not only wasn't he obligated, he didn't do it. He didn't, it could be that maybe he felt those people deserve what they got. It could be other answers, but the way somewhere in the Gemara that he wasn't willing to risk his life to save someone else. And a famous Gemara about two people stuck in the desert, only enough water for one. So what do? So Ben Petira says, share the water. You're going to look at how could you look around at someone else die? And Rabbi Akiva says, no, your life takes precedence over others. And we follow Rabbi Akiva. But Ben Petira makes no sense. Why should both die? That doesn't make any sense. We're very pragmatic Judaism. Why would we say two people die? So the answer is no. It's not a case where they're definitely going to die. The question is, you have enough water for 2 days. You're 2 days away from civilization. Who knows? If you share the water and they only have enough for 1 day, maybe you'll find some more water, maybe the rescue team will come. The question is, are you obligated to risk your life to save someone else? So Ben Petira says yes. Rabbi Akiva says it's a good svara, but what can I do? The Torah tells me no. So the bottom line is the Bavli disagrees with the Jerusalem Talmud. One is not obligated to risk one's life to save someone else. Now, with that being said, Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, not the one who was here, but one of his descendants, who was the rabbi in Brisk, there was a cholera epidemic, an infectious disease, and he himself, and he told everyone else, he demanded they go out and help the people, and some people died. The people who helped, he felt you were obligated. He went with the Jerusalem Talmud saying you are obligated. The normative halacha is not like another story they say in Vilna. The story with the Ger Tzedek is this person who became a convert, and in Vilna someone stole from the church, and they told the Jewish people, I guess they said it was the Jews, whether it was or not, who knows, and they said either you give us the thief, or we're going to kill everyone in the town. So this convert who used to be Catholic, who is now Jewish, came to the Vilna Gaon and said, I didn't do it, but could I go and volunteer? Could I tell them I did it? And maybe they'll have mercy because I once was a Catholic. So the Vilna Gaon said, okay, let me think about it. Of course, when the Vilna Gaon let me think about it, he took it, the Vilna Gaon, if anyone knew the answer to the question, he did. So he took it to mean that I'm not going to tell you to do it, but the fact that the Vilna Gaon didn't tell him no, that meant he should do it. And at least not whether he was obligated or not, who knows, but he went ahead and he did. He was killed, and the Jewish people were saved. So Rav Chaim seems to go with the Yerushalmi, but the normative halacha is one is not obligated. But let me even point out, even according to the Jerusalem Talmud, even according to Rav Chaim, a kidney transplant, I would say, is different. Even if you say you have to risk your life in a case of infectious disease, that's because why? Once you do it, either you're going to make it or you're not going to make it. But usually you come out fine. To say you're obligated to give up a kidney and walk around with one kidney the rest of your life, that's already going to the next step. I don't even think the Jerusalem Talmud would say you are obligated to give up a kidney. It might be a tremendous mitzvah to do. And I know families, we know a son gave a kidney for a father, a tremendous mitzvah. And in fact, my friend who's a doctor in Woodmere, so the Young Israel of Woodmere is one of the biggest shuls in North America. And so someone put up an index card, said, I need a kidney, and he just left the number. No one knew. And about 8 people called, and there was one match. And the guy said, he'll do it. So my friend who's a doctor asked the guy, what do your parents think? Like, you're donating a kidney to someone you don't even know? Oh, he said, I'm a Baal Tshuva. My parents think I'm crazy anyway. I became much more religious than my parents, and they think I'm nuts, so it doesn't make a difference anymore. But either way, the point being is, it's a tremendous mitzvah. You're definitely not obligated, but again, if you look at the different response about whether kidney transplants are permitted, some will say it's prohibited, and some will say it's permitted. And I want to point out it's not really a dispute. What do you mean it's not a dispute? One says it's prohibited, one says it's permitted. What bigger? No, because you have to know when they were written. The ones that were written in 1960, maybe 1970, because then it was a danger. You probably both would die because no one knew what they were doing, or not as well as now. But a response in 2000 and certainly 2012, again, as the old joke goes, what's the difference between major surgery and minor surgery? when it's happening to you, it's minor. When it's happening to me, it's major. But it's still, anytime you go under the knife, it's surgery. But it's it's not an uncommon surgery anymore. So therefore, the risk reward is in your favor. So therefore, it wouldn't be prohibited to do a kidney transplant, but you just wouldn't be obligated to. But everyone agrees if you do it, assuming it's a case where you're not putting yourself at excessive risk. You're going to definitely put yourself at some risk because you only have one kidney now, and then you might need someone else's kidney soon. Hopefully not, but then you're just putting yourself. So it's a great mitzvah if you do it, but I can't say it's mandatory. Yeah.
I'm wondering, the Talmud Bavli was written first.
Oh, yeah, it's about 300, couple hundred
Right,
years.
so the Jerusalem
That's
Bavli,
why we follow the Bavli, because it was written after.
Right, but the Jerusalem Bavli was written first. And I'm wondering, when it was written, if times were a little bit different, and that's why it was, you should be willing to give to save a life in this particular case, because maybe there were less people.
You mean less people in the world, you mean?
Less Jews. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe it's like life's pretty...
the historical context was different.
Yeah, I think so.
As far as maybe dangerous to the Jewish population.
Yeah, right. Not, you say not in terms of kidney. If it wasn't a kidney,
No, but I'm just talking. Yeah, like even with the example with.
It's possible, but I'm saying it's not the reason he gave. Like but could have been that could have been part of the big picture that. But
right.
His reason, the base Yosef gives the reason. He says because if you don't do anything, that person's definitely going to die.
Right.
Yeah, so that would apply anytime. But you're right, that could have been, I don't
part of it.
Yeah, that's, we don't know. It's interesting speculation, but but definitely could, it's possible it played a role.
Because I mean, even since from the Talmud to now, certain halachas, right, have been not changed, but
yeah, in terms of
we see them
health,
differently.
Different health issues that let's say Gemara considered health, and we see today they're not. Like for instance, is halacha about we'll get to it in a minute. So I'll save that halacha about circumcision in a minute. But that's the conclusion. It's praiseworthy under the right situation to give a kidney, but certainly not mandatory. And this is only one-on-one. But let's say one for all. Let's say you're going to risk your life to save many. That's a different question. In fact, risking your life to save the whole Jewish people, then maybe that becomes mandatory. So again, one-on-one we're talking about, but when we're dealing with one person saving 1,000 or one person saving the whole Jewish people, that's a whole different question. Because one of the three things you have to give up your life for is if someone puts a gun to you and says either murder this person or I'll kill you.
Commit adultery.
So we have or adultery or out of worship. But if you say in murder, so the halacha is you cannot kill another person to save your life, because who says your blood is redder than his? That's the language in the Gemara, which means who says his life is any less worthy than your life. However, that you can't say one-on-one. But obviously when you're dealing 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million, 1 in 5 million, you can make. In fact, there's a Elena, but there were cases where in Nazi Germany where it was not uncommon where the Nazi soldiers, like they raped the Jewish women, and sometimes when you rape someone, you get them pregnant. So there was a case where this woman, and the Nazis couldn't find out, they'd get in trouble also. So he found out this girl was pregnant, obviously, and so he went to a Jewish doctor, because if he went to a Nazi doctor, they would have reported him. And he put a gun to it and said, either you do the abortion, or I'm going to kill you. So what's the halacha? Are you allowed to do an abortion on this woman to save your own life? So that's the discussion. So the poskim say yes. Why? Because even though in Judaism we believe life begins at conception, as the comic strip I always say when I went to the motor vehicles, I saw a comic strip. There was 3 people. They were debating when does life begin. So there was a minister, priest minister. There was a liberal, and there was a teenager. So of course the minister said, life begins at conception. That's just, it's better 2 deaths than 1 murder. If a fetus is endangering mommy, that's it, you both die. And the liberal says, what do you mean? It's my body, no one tells me to do an abortion, I'll do whatever I want. Life begins while the baby's in me, I do whatever I want once it's born. And the teenager said, when you get your driver's license, that's when life begins. So whenever life begins, so even if you assume that life begins, we do assume life begins at conception because we say we're prohibited to have it, but it's not the same as someone who is a full nefesh. So that's why those who argue one would be permitted to commit an abortion to save someone's life. So because you have to have some objective reason to say why your life is more valuable than or not less valuable. So that's a discussion over there. So the other question with infectious disease came up. Someone had an infectious disease. The movie Outbreak. Dustin Hoffman, Rene Russo.
Monkey.
Right. It's one thing when I quote the Talmud, you don't know. When I quote the movies, I'm like, no. Yes, so go on.
Cuba Gooding Jr. or the monkey or both?
Yeah.
Right, Junior, wasn't that with the pregnant man or something?
No,
No.
you're
That's
thinking
a
of
different-
Junior.
Oh,
Arnold
I thought you said
Schwarzenegger.
Junior.
Cuba Gooding
Yeah.
Jr. is in it.
I didn't even know about. The only reason I heard about Junior because I was reading a contemporary halacha book and he said there was a movie Junior.
There was.
I
with
know.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, I
And
believe
Danny
him.
DeVito.
I'm just saying I was reading in the footnotes. That's how I knew.
Yeah.
I even never
They're
heard of
twins.
Junior. So the case was this person had an infectious disease and the government said anything that comes in contact with you in the next week we're going to incinerate for safety reasons. So any clothes, anything you touch, so the shayla was, is he allowed to put on tefillin? Could he put on his phylacteries in the morning, or for that matter, I guess, his talis or anything else, in order, but the tefillin more, because you're destroying God's name.
What happens if you touch the Torah?
Yeah, so the same would be the same. Yeah,
Even
but
worse.
he's isolated, so I'm assuming,
Yeah.
right, I bet you're right. If he wanted to touch the Torah, that'd be the same shayla, maybe even more, yeah. Because the Torah has a little more kedusha, but it's a similar shayla. So they point out, first they want to say maybe it's dependent on the following question. Here's the Mila question I was talking about. It used to be, back in the day of the Talmud, for health reasons, you had to heat up hot water before and after the circumcision. In other words, it was for health of the child. So, that's what I was pointing out. Today, meaning the Beis Yosef who lived in the 1500s says we don't do it anymore. We don't need it. We have other septics, antiseptics. So I'm just pointing out, if it's something that's just for health reasons, and we have better health reasons, then we don't need that, so we drop it. So, in fact, you even used to be able to machal Shabbos. You could desecrate the Shabbos and do it. Today they say you can't desecrate. We don't even do it during the week. You certainly can't desecrate the Shabbos for it. So the case is, so clearly you have to heat up hot water. Let's say you did the bris, you did the circumcision, and the water spilled. So then what? Well, we're not going to say let the child die. So either you get a non-Jew to do it, or you do it yourself. If you have to, you heat up the hot water and you apply, because that's a mitzvah to save someone's life, and we even desecrate the Shabbos. What about if the water spilled before you did the milah? You're about to do the circumcision, no one's in danger yet, and you're not going to have the water after, and it's Shabbos, and it's day 8.
You
And
postpone the milah.
you're supposed to do it on day 8, so
You postpone it.
so we'll get to that in a second. So that's the next opinion. The Ramban Nechmanani writes, "Ein lucha mitzvah elo l'shaitza." We only do a mitzvah in its proper time. God told me to do a meal on day 8. I don't have to worry about what's happening afterward. As the chips fall where they may, do the meal. And if you have to heat up hot water, so let it be. And the Baal Mor says, no, you don't have to make accountings what's going to happen a week from now, a month from now, but 2 minutes from now you do. So he says, like Ira, that one pushes the bris off until Sunday, and that's the way we follow. Well, we don't really follow today because we don't heat up hot water, but in theory, that's the opinion. So some want to say that's the issue here. According to the Ramban, let him wear the tefillin, and if you have to incinerate the tefillin. Right now, the mitzvah to wear tefillin. What happens tomorrow, I can't worry about. And the Baal Mor says, no, since it's something that's going to happen, we know it's going to happen pretty soon, so therefore you do have to worry about it, and therefore not to not to put it on. So that's, don't want to say it's dependent on that. And others say perhaps even everybody would agree not to put on the tefillin. Why? Based on the following Gemara. The Gemara says in the 19th perek in Shabbos, there's a case with Elisha, not the Navi, he was a rabbi, I guess. Elisha Baal Kenafayim, he was called Elisha, the one like with the story with the dove. I'll tell you in a minute. The Gemara over there talks about different mitzvahs that originally, if they were accepted out of joy, so even today we do them joyously. One example is Mila. Of course, the father does it joyously. We don't know about how happy the kid is. And on the other hand, the Gemara talks about other mitzvahs which weren't accepted b'simcha. Now it's hard to get people to do it. One example is the mitzvah of tefillin. That it's hard to get people. A lot more. It's hard to get people to put on tefillin every morning. So in fact, I remember a story probably 10 years ago, maybe longer, when the yeshiva of Hamilton was here. Well, the building's still here, but the yeshiva was here. And in the summer, they used to rent out the yeshiva to Chabad, Lubavitch. And we all know one of the things Chabad is very meticulous on is going around making sure people put on tefillin. I saw them downtown, going around. That's what they do in the afternoon. So it was probably I don't know if it was a Friday afternoon or some other day. They don't know anyone in the community. So I was in my house. I was on Westwood at this point, and I was probably barbecuing in the back. I don't know. Had my sweats on, whatever. They didn't know. They had no idea who I was, and they came over, knocked on my door, and said, "Do I want to put on tefillin today?" So I said, "Rashi or Rabbeinu Tam." That's because they put on this two pair. They put on both. And then I said to the guy, "You know why you're doing this?" So he didn't know what I was talking about anyway. He started giving me, rambling on about stuff. I said, "I'll tell you why. It's the Gemara here in Shabbos, that since the Jews never accepted tefillin b'simcha, so now they're having a hard time getting them, so you have to go around making sure people put on tefillin." So either way, here's the story. The story goes that the non-Jewish government made a decree, no tefillin. You can't wear tefillin. So Elisha, this rabbi or this person, disobeyed the decree and he put on tefillin. And a soldier saw him, so he started running until they got into a dead end. He had nowhere to go. He saw the soldier coming, so he quickly took off his tefillin and put it in his hand. So the soldier said, "What do you have in your hand?" "Oh, nothing. I have like a dove and stuff." "Yeah, show me. Open your hand." And sure enough, it was a dove. So that's why it's called Elisha Baal. That's the story. So the question is, how do we see from this story that the Jews were lax in tefillin? Either some say because no one else was wearing tefillin except him, or some say they criticized him for taking it off. He should have left it on, because even though normally for the big three you only give up your life for, but when there's a time of religious persecution, if it's specifically religious intent, like if someone tells you, someone comes on Shabbos to your house and says, puts a gun to us and take the steak out on barbecue because he's starving, there's nothing to talk about. Of course you do it. He's not doing it. There's no religious, he doesn't care that Shabbos, he just wants to eat. But if there's religious connotation, then under certain situations, it's even a mitzvah to give up your life. So why did he take off his tefillin then, if there was a mitzvah to give up his life? But some say it's only a mitzvah if you go against a negative commandment, but merely not to perform a positive commandment, you don't have to. So some point out, the reason why he didn't give up the reason why he took the tefillin off? He would have gave up his life, but he knew if he gave him the tefillin, he destroyed the tefillin, and he'd cause them to be destroyed. So that's why he took the tefillin off. So what do we see? So based on this Gemara, people say that we see that if you know something's going to be destroyed, don't put yourself in this situation. He could have gave over the tefillin. He could have left the tefillin on and let the Roman or the soldier take it. But the fact that Elisha didn't, we see better not to wear the tefillin. That's the psak of the Dovev and Mesharim, that we don't put on our tefillin because we know it's going to be incinerated. Of course, the question that you have to know, are we talking about a 25-year question or a 2-day question? If it's 25 years, and to say someone can't wear tefillin for the next 25 years, that's a different question, because by then maybe the tefillin will become puzzle, and you're going to bury them anyway. But so therefore, that's the question by tefillin. And the other issue is, what about infectious disease regarding circumcision? Especially recently, in this last week in the States, the board of the U.S. came out with their advisory saying they had a case where 11 children over the past year were either got very sick or died from what? One moel, that they died from what they call mitzitza bepeh. Let me explain what that means. There are different parts to a circumcision. There's the cutting off the foreskin. There's the priya, revealing the membrane. And those two are critical. The Mishnah says if you only do mila, not priya, it's not a good circumcision. So those two are critical. But there's a third one that the Gemara talks about, is you have to do mitzitza, that's sucking out the blood. Why do you have to suck out the blood from the child? Because it's supposed to be, it's a safety issue that stopped blood. During those days they thought it would stop the blood clotting. So they used to suck out the blood, with the mouth. The moel used to suck out the blood with his mouth. It was a safety for the child. So the Gemara says, has strong words, that any mohel that doesn't do mitzitza, we fire him. We get rid of him. Why? That's very harsh. Right? Let's say you're an employer and your employee makes one mistake, you're going to get rid of him? No, because here you're putting the child in suffix sakana. If you're putting someone in doubtful danger, so then we have zero tolerance. We make sure it's not going to happen again, and we say you can't be a moa. So it's from the Gemara, the implication is the reason you do mitzitza is to help the child. It's for the health of the child. So what about today, that you doing mitzitza bepeh? Many infectious disease doctors say not to do it. In fact, it's the opposite of the Gemara. You are potentially harming the child. Herpes B, the whole works. So what do you do when the Gemara says it's healthy and medical science says it's the opposite, it's unhealthy? So that's what the question is. So many point out, the first question is whether you need mitzitza at all today. Because if the whole reason you need mitzitza is to avoid danger, so at this time we got rid of washing the child with the hot water, some say there's no need to do mitzitza at all, and therefore it's a non-issue. However, other opinions is you have to do it, and we assume no reputable won't do it. Everyone does it. However, the question is, who says it has to be bepeh? Who says it has to be done with your mouth? In fact, this is a new shaila. In 1888 or something, they used to do it. They first come out doing it with different tubes and no one says it has to be done bepeh. There are those who say, in the Hasidic circles, and others say it specifically has to be done. So we assume normative halacha, and in many shuls in New York, New Jersey area, prohibit you. They won't let you do a milah in shul if you do mitzitza bepeh. They feel you're endangering the child. You have to do mitzitza bekli with the vessel. And in fact, there's a famous story with Rav Soloveitchik. This goes back probably 30, 40 years ago. So he used to say his father, Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, had zero. If someone in shul wanted to do a mitzitza bepeh, he used to throw him out of there. The son said, I didn't encourage it, but I was a little more tolerant. But that was like 40, 50 years ago. Today, with the known dangers, it's a whole different story. The question is, for those who insist on doing mitzitza bepeh, because they say you have to, it's halacha Moshe Misinai. So the question to the mitzitza bepeh camp is, let's assume you have to do mitzitza. I assume you do mitzitza bekli, and it's not a question. But for those who say you have to do mitzitza bepeh, so at what point, if any, is there a point where the statistics come out? Obviously, it's not one of the things you give up your life for, and certainly it's a different shaila giving up your kid's life. That's a separate discussion. Even if you assume you could put your own life at risk, many assume it's a different question, putting your kid's life at risk, or putting, let's say, an elder parent who can't decide on their own. That's a discussion Moshe thinks the parent can make the decision. Others say that no, you have no right to put the child at any extra risk. You have a right to take a extra risk on yourself. And it's a big child today in Israel. It's people moving to Steiros, these dangerous places in Israel. Whether you're allowed to bring your kids there if they don't want to go. Obviously, if you get permission from everyone, I don't mean the kids who are 2 and don't know, but the ones who are afraid. So that, I'm not saying the answer is no, but it's a shayla. So the question here is there any extra shmira if you're doing a mitzvah? We know you can't take a regular risk for, let's say there's a fine line between bravery and stupidity. What happened Friday night in Niagara Falls, I'll leave it to you, whether that's bravery or stupidity. But the question is, if you're doing it for a mitzvah, are you allowed to take a higher amount of risk? And by doing it for a mitzvah, that means doing a parnasa, making a living. So if this guy does it for a living, I don't know if he even got paid for it, but if he's doing it for a living, it's a different question. You think he did?
Or through something.
Yes, I'm just saying, maybe indirect. So I'm just saying, if this person did it for a living, then I'm not saying it was permitted or not, but then you're allowed to take a higher element, whether you're allowed to work in coal mines or in the toxic waste places, that depends on all the risk in that, how much risk, but you can't take a higher level of risk. The Gemara talks about in Psachim, on Pesach, or I should say before Pesach, one has a mitzvah of bedikas chametz, searching for the chametz. As we all know, we go around with the candle, or today I recommend the flashlight, not to burn your house down, and you go around with the spoon and all that. So the question the Gemara says, what happens if your house is infested with snakes? I guess maybe you should be living there in the first place, but you're doing a bedikas chametz in a place which is infested with snakes. The Gemara raises the question, since you're doing a mitzvah, is there an extra level of protection? Because the Gemara has a principle, shchuchei mitzvah eino nizaki. When you're involved in a mitzvah, it causes no harm. Of course, the Gemara qualifies it by saying only if it's a place where it's uncommon. If basically you go in this place where it's a very small chance that the snakes are going to bite you, then if you're doing a mitzvah, you don't have to, but then you have a right to rely on it. But if it's a 50% high chance, then you're not allowed to. It's a place where you're in danger. So normally you can't put yourself in excessive danger even for a mitzvah. However, the Gemara in Sota expands it. I don't know if any of us are on this level, but the Gemara says, if you do a mitzvah lishma, you do it purely for altruistic reasons. You don't, who could actually say they do that, but you do it for pure, unadulterated, only for the pure sake of the mitzvah. So even if you're in a dangerous place, the mitzvah will protect you. Or if you're learning totally lishma, not for credits or whatever, so then the Torah will protect you. In fact, that's how some explain. The Gemara says in Ksuvis 77b that you should stay away from people with infectious diseases. The Gemara knew that a long time ago. It's not a good idea to hang and chill out with people with infectious diseases. And the Gemara says, Rav Shimon ben Lakish was praised for hanging out and teaching Torah to them. The question is, how could he risk his life to be with them? So the Gemara says, because of Shimon ben Lakish, he learned Torah Lishma, and he felt the extra protection. Similarly, it's the same Reish Lakish who went in the Jerusalem Talmud we started with, who went in and he saved Ravimi. So they point out that if you do a mitzvah lishma, there's an extra level of protection. Who's to says today, no one's on that level. But that's what the Gemara says in Baba Metzia 112, Kuf Yud Beis, I believe, that if someone has a parnasa which has a higher element of danger, you're allowed to make a living. You can't commit suicide, but you can take a higher level risk, because the Torah implies certain times you're willing to give up your life for your employer. Like the Gemara says, let's say someone who works cleaning windows on I won't say the World Trade Center, on the CN Tower, or that other building in New York, the Empire State Building.
Chrysler Building.
Could you work? So the Gemara talks about the famous tshuva of the response of the Noda B'Yehuda. can a Jew be a hunter? Someone asked him, could I be a hunter? So he says, it's not really a Yiddish profession, you should become a doctor, right? No, he doesn't. He says, hunting really isn't for Jews. So really, he says, really a Jew should not be, it's because it involves a lot of danger. And we see Esav and Nimrod, the people who worshipped idols, they were hunters, and it involves too much risk. Even people shooting you, besides the animals, you get shot a lot of times. However, he says, if you're doing it to make a living, then I can't say it's prohibited. Because for entertainment value, it's prohibited, because only X amount of risk you could take. Maybe climbing, tightroping across Niagara Falls for fun. But maybe for a living, we could, especially if you have the harness on, that takes away a lot of the risk. Did he take the harness off or leave it on? He left it on. People were saying once he started, he was going to take it off.
It's too hard.
Yeah, so therefore, that's what they point out. So for mitzvah purposes, making a living, you can't commit suicide or take excessive risk, but you can take a higher level of risk, and therefore taking different jobs which have a little more risk, that one is permitted to do.